2 new ferries, a lifeline to island communities and a cost to the taxpayer of £97.5 million. That was the plan. What transpired was a shambles. The procurement body CMAL commissioned the 2 new vessels. A recent BBC documentary alleged that process could have been illegal, with the winning yard Ferguson's being given preferential treatment over other bidders. Ministers awarded the contract to Ferguson's despite CMAL raising concerns that the yard couldn't produce a builder's refund guarantee, a legally binding arrangement that protects the public purse should the builder default. The key minister responsible was the Transport Secretary, Derek Mackay. The relationship between Ferguson's and CMAL broke down. The builder and the procurement agency were continually at loggerheads over the design and delivery of the ferries. The acrimony was mutual. The government have had to repeatedly shovel millions to sustain the commissioning of the vessels.
This week it emerged that Ferguson shipyard had received preferential treatment from this government and its agencies in its bid to build 2 ferries. So, First Minister, why did Ferguson shipyard receive special treatment from your government?
Ministers are not aware of any impropriety in this procurement process. That said, ministers were not involved in the process. We were not cited on procurement documents or privy to exchanges between CMAL and bidders.
The First Minister has repeatedly told Parliament that the buck stops with her, but no ministerial head has rolled for what is one of the great financial scandals of the devolved era. Until he quit the cabinet as Finance Secretary, following tabloid allegations about his private life, Derek Mackay was the minister most closely associated with the award of the contract. He hasn't given any interview on his role in the fiasco, until now. I pressed him on the procurement process, whether Ferguson's should have got the work, why the public purse has been so exposed, what role Nicola Sturgeon has played, and why no one has resigned over the issue.
Well, I can only answer for the decisions that I've taken and all the evidence that I've looked at, and I went back through all the evidence in answering to the Committee of the Scottish Parliament on the decisions that I took, which were all well-intentioned. As to the specifics of what was going on within CMAL, there is now a process to look at that and investigate that, and of course I'm keep an open mind as to what that concludes and what that will find, and I wouldn't want to prejudice that.
Okay, but could this contract have been awarded illegally? Possibly. Could it have been awarded illegally?
Well, only CMAL can answer for that because they know what was going on behind the scenes. I wouldn't like to think so. I mean, I welcomed the award of the contract because it was good for Inverclyde, it was good for shipbuilding, it was good for the workers, and we thought it would be good for the CalMac.
But given what we now know, it surely must be the case, and I put it no greater than this, that there is a possibility that this procurement process was conducted illegally.
Well, ministers acted lawfully at the time, and I certainly acted lawfully at the time, and would assume... Does CMAL
have a case to answer that they behaved potentially illegally?
Yes, I do think CMAL has a case to answer, but I don't want to prejudice that because there is an investigation underway. What I do know is ministers had nothing to do with it. Ministers were very clear in our intentions as to a proper, legal procurement exercise that would deliver the best result.
But what is your understanding of what a building refund guarantee is? What's your understanding of it?
Well, fundamentally, if the vessel isn't complete, the purchaser, the procuring authority would get their money back.
The public purse would get their money back?
Absolutely.
If you sign off on a contractual regime where this guarantee is not in place, you are explicitly accepting that all of the risk falls not on the builder, but on the public purse.
Well, the BRG wasn't a 100% guarantee. It was reduced substantially, not what we would have liked, but the advice that I was given, this is important, was not that that was creating a major risk of delivery. Actually, the risk of the financial risk, that it was the procurement risk that was more of a highlight. that never came to pass, that there was a procurement challenge. The anticipation was that Ferguson's could complete these vessels on time and on budget, and the advice I was given that everyone was satisfied that that could be delivered. Therefore, the risk of the BRG being required was very low. Now, that hasn't
I accept
transpired to be the case, but that was the advice before me.
I accept that that's the advice that you were given. But what I'm asking you to accept that as a matter of principle, if you do not have the BRG, by definition, the risk transfers from the builder ultimately to the public purse. That's just a statement of fact.
Yes, okay, I agree that there was some transfer of risk, but my assessment was, based on the advice that had been given...
Some transfer of risk. There was a lot of transfer of risk,
yes,
as it turns out. What would have happened in the circumstances where the refund guarantee had been made by Ferguson?
So we're speculating, and I can do that if you want, but because of the financial model that Ferguson's had deployed, they had said that they couldn't have provided a BRG, so the order would not have gone to Ferguson's. Ferguson's would probably have closed, and the jobs would have been lost, and the order would have went elsewhere if we hadn't have
So the decision to give it to Ferguson's was political.
Ferguson's.
So the decision to give it to Ferguson's, therefore, was political. You knew that they didn't have this guarantee. In your own words, you have said that such a guarantee is mandatory, but you were prepared to turn a blind eye to that.
Not a blind eye.
Because the politics of this was that Ferguson's had to get the work.
No, there were jobs involved. There was the potential of a Scottish shipyard delivering vessels for the CalMac fleet, which were desperately needed. I say again, the evaluation proved to be the case that Ferguson's had the best bid of all the yards that put in a bid. It was a good outcome for a Scottish yard.
Where were we contractually at the point when preferred bidder status was announced?
The deal hadn't been concluded.
The deal hadn't been concluded. The guarantee had not been got. The practical effect of that announcement was to say, it's okay, it's going to the yards, we're going to save this yard, and that announcement was made in the absence of a guarantee where the contractual position around this had not crystallised. Now, I'm putting to you, that's foolhardy.
No, the presence of a builder's refund guarantee doesn't actually guarantee delivery, and I accept it would have been better to have it, but you asked me if we didn't have it, the order would not have gone.
What state was the contractual position when this announcement
Ferguson's, was made? The decision around preferred bidder status.
Yes. What stage, where were we contractually?
At that stage, negotiations were still underway, but Ferguson's had been selected as the preferred bidder.
At the point, although they were preferred bidder status, the contracts had not been nailed down. It was possible, was it not, that at that stage, Ferguson's might not have got the work, depending on whether or not they were capable of delivering the contract.
Yes, but the point I'm making, Bernard, is there was no suggestion that Ferguson's couldn't deliver the contract. There was a high level of confidence in Ferguson's at the time. It had been producing vessels for the CalMac fleet. Everybody knows that we urgently need new vessels for the CalMac fleet. Therefore, it was appropriate to proceed on the basis of the information that we had at the time.
Let's be absolutely clear on this point. In terms of you signing off, despite the concerns of CMAL on the guarantee, what was the First Minister told about this and when she told it?
Well, I won't know the answer to that question because I don't know who engaged with the First Minister, but I know what was in the paperwork that I saw, which is...
You didn't engage with her personally?
I didn't engage personally with the First Minister.
Not a single conversation
over this
with her?
issue on that particular...
Not a single conversation with her?
On that particular submission, no. Generally, did I know of the political support for Ferguson's across the political spectrum in Scotland?
But
yes, I did.
Specifically on signing off?
I'm answering you specifically. I did not discuss that submission with the First Minister.
Did an email go from your office to her office with the CMAL concerns?
There was the submission which, from memory, I don't have it in front of me, was circulated to a number of officials. It was across government. It was to the Infrastructure Cabinet Secretary as well.
This was all done at an official level?
at official level and from memory political level in terms of my cabinet secretary at the time. But I would make the point.
And was your department at any point told from the First Minister's office that, having got receipt of this paperwork, that she was content for you to proceed?
The First Minister was not asked to give an opinion whether she was content or she wasn't content, but I knew from the submission, Scottish Government Legal Directorate were content, Economy Section was content, the lawyers were content, Transport was content, and the recommendation that was put to me was to proceed in accordance with the advice that had been given and the matters that had, I was told, reassured CMAL of the concerns that you've quite rightly identified.
Hindsight's an exact science, and the passage of time allows for reflection. Looking back on it, what is the one thing, or maybe more than one thing, that happened that resulted in this going off the rails in the way that it did?
I think the breakdown in the relationship between the procuring authority and the contractor was an issue, but there are other agencies involved as well, and there was contradictory information and advice and opinion. So I'd say part of the issue was the nature of relationships.
But does that explain the sheer magnitude of the public money that has been lost, the mere fact that relationships were poor?
It's part of the issue. I mean, everyone involved, there are many people involved in this issue, and everyone has a part to play in how it's come about.
I would put it to you that CMAL as a public body, according to people who are desperate for these ferries, this organisation is not fit for purpose.
Well, I'd say that the structure's not fit for purpose, and I'd pose the question, why have CMAL separate to CalMac, separate to Transport Scotland? So there's clearly an opportunity to bring it all together, to have a far more robust and resilient transport organisation or department.
If you were still in government, if I can put it like this, as a matter of honour, as something that has gone catastrophically wrong on your watch as the minister who signed it off, would you have perhaps reflected and said to yourself that it is appropriate in these circumstances that I no longer continue in government?
Well, Bernard, I'm not a minister, and I'm not in government, and I'm not a politician, but when I was there, I was making the right decisions by the people of Scotland, and I was convinced we were doing the right thing at the time. I felt it was a team approach, a collective decision. I was the lead minister, and when things started to go wrong, I was certainly proactive as a minister as well. So it's very regrettable the way the situation has evolved, but I've also made suggestions as to how it could be improved in the future.
Ordinary folk will look at this collectively and say, here are politicians who have oversight for this, who are spending public money, who are accountable to Parliament for these decisions, and we're £250 million down as a result of something that they ultimately are responsible for, and yet every last one of them is still in a job. People, ordinary voters, just find this unbelievable. Do you get why they're angry?
Well, I understand why islanders are unhappy that the vessels haven't been delivered, and I understand why taxpayers are unhappy at the outcome. But again, the decisions were made with the best of intentions, and I can only answer for the decisions that I have taken, and I've tried to do my best in doing that and going back and looking at the evidence as to who did what. I don't think any one person is at fault here, but I've certainly taken my share of responsibility. And Bernard, as you know, I'm no longer in government, but I've tried to be as transparent as possible around this issue, including going to the Scottish Parliament to answer for the decisions that I've taken.
Many people regard this as the biggest scandal of the devolved era. Is scandal the right word to use?
I don't know. I don't think so. I think that's for other people to judge. It's contract failure, certainly.
Contract failure?
Yes, I would say contract failure. Well, okay, what's the element of scandal?
The fact that the government decided that they were going to, through CMAL, have two ferries built at £97.5 million, and the taxpayer is down by £250 million and counting. Some people, I'm not saying me, I'm playing devil's advocate here, some people regard that as a scandal. You don't like the word scandal. What's the right word?
I've said contract failure because when we've had to deal with this issue in detail, it's very important that choose the right words. Now other people can describe it as a scandal, that's up to them. I'm simply saying from my role, it was absolutely
It's a scandalous state of affairs, is it not?
It's a scandalous state of affairs. Maybe we can agree on those wordings.
Derek Mackay, thank you very much indeed for your time.
Thank you.